Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Investor Financing Podcast. And on today's episode, we're going to talk about how to ADU, specific to California, because that's where our guest has his expertise. And I started watching his YouTube channel because ADUs always, as an investor, have always intrigued me. And before I moved to Las Vegas, I did a flip in Concord, California. And it had this detached garage, and it seemed ripe for like an ADU or a conversion or whatever we want to call it. And we'll kind of dive into the rules and stuff but it was like an oversized detached garage. And I look back and I should have never sold that property because I could have probably Airbnb'd both of them, or at least one, and kept one as a long-term rental and been cash flowing tremendously. But ADUs really seem to be like the biggest emerging trend because nobody can afford housing anymore. So maybe you want to stay in your house and you're about to retire and you have this big yard in the backyard, or maybe you have a garage or a second garage that could be converted, or maybe you build ground up. And so we're going to dive into all these topics today. SB9. I don't know much about SB9, but we'll learn about SB9, I'm sure. Some of the questions that came to my mind were the differences between junior ADUs, doing an ADU with a junior ADU, and then size limits. I read somewhere around 1,200 square feet is the max they say for an ADU. So that could be wrong. So please welcome Ryan O'Connell to the show. And he is the founder of How to ADU, and he also, which is kind of cool, he has a wine business. And, I actually have to dive into this real quick. My friend had a hobby, her father had a hobby vineyard, and they would do the actual bottling. And so they invited me over, and I got to bottle wine, and it was a great day, and it was fun. And if you've never done something like that, man, is it enjoyable. I'm not a huge wine drinker, but I love going wine tasting. It's like like people like niche down in the wine business, and it's like, do you smell this and the nuttiness of this? And it's like I really can't tell the difference. And by the third or fourth flight, I'm ready toast anyway. So, well, welcome to the show, Ryan. Thanks for joining us.
I'm happy to talk about ADUs, SB9, nuttiness in wine. We can do it all. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah. So let's just kind of, for anybody that doesn't know what an ADU is, can you kind of explain it to the world here?
Yeah. It's a very hard term to deal with because it's a relatively new legal term. It wasn't in common use until very recently. And what people are doing is at either state level or local level, governments are defining it in a way to give people permits for granny flats, backyard units, garage conversion apartments. And it can mean a lot of different things. And that definition changes city to city, state to state. So it's a tough one. It means like 35 different things. But basically, it stands for Accessory Dwelling Unit. Accessory means it can't be the only thing on the lot. There has to be a primary house, and this is an accessory structure. Dwelling means somebody has to be able to live in it. So it's got to have like cooking facilities and a bathroom, but although there's some exceptions when we get to JADUs, junior ADUs. And then unit is it's a separate unit. So it'll get counted as a habitable quarter in different calculations the government runs.
Okay, so let's dive in. That was a great explanation. So let's just dive in, and somebody's interested, and you act as a consultant in this space. So you help people that want an ADU. So let's just say it's in XYZ city. Obviously, you know the codes and the zoning rules for the different cities, or you know how to research and find out the information per city because each city is a little different. Mm-hmm. And then there's an overlaying federal laws or state laws, state laws rather. So if somebody comes to you and says, listen, I'm not sure if I want to do, a garage conversion versus actually maybe do a site build or stick built ADU or modular type of build. Can you walk us through like the process of like how you analyze these type of when a customer comes to you or a client comes to you, because it's a little bit overwhelming. Like, do I want to do site build? How much is it going to cost? I can just go get this modular and all I have to do. How do you size these up?
And there's always these chicken or egg issues, like what's my budget? What can I afford? What's it cost? Oh, go back to scratch, right? So I always start with what the customer needs, right? And if it's somebody telling me, Ryan, I can't use my 3 floor, 5 bedroom house anymore. My kids have grown up and moved out, but I don't want to leave my neighborhood. Then it's all about what's the best way to age in place. Maybe it's an ADU forever home in the backyard. Maybe it's converting part of the existing house and renting out the rest. Maybe it's some other solution. But that kind of lets you dive in and start grappling with the rules that can help that person. If it's a real estate investor and they say, I'm all about rental income, then I'm much more likely to say, then let's have a conversation about speed. What's the fastest way to get a CO and start making money on this unit? Because there's ways you can save $10,000, but they add 3 months to your timeline, and that's bonkers. And if it's a flipper, it's another conversation. So it really depends. I start with what that person needs, and then I dive into the local rules and which rules will help them get to where they're going most efficiently.
I know you're not a lender like I am, but I'm just curious on what you've experienced with some of your clients as far as when they finish their project. Now they're thinking, I want to refinance because I've created value. Are appraisers starting to put dollar amount on ADUs now? Is it starting to get more known?
Yeah, it's getting more known, but that's also not difficult because it was so bad before. There's It's still very piecemeal, and you hear horror stories where appraisers come in and say $0 for the ADU. You hear other stories where people give the same dollar per square foot as the primary. You hear other stories where people go, "Oh, you actually, I used the multifamily evaluation for this property because there's 2 ADUs plus the," yeah. And so you kind of hear everything, and it's really important to work with lenders and appraisers that know what they're doing with ADUs, and or can staff up for that project. What's a good example? There's a lot of construction type loans that people are trying to use to build ADUs. And if the lender is motivated to get you the right appraisal, then that's a much different scenario than somebody who's kind of got the blinders on, Fannie Freddie rules, and is just like in and out and not always thinking about how that ADU is going to appraise once it's done. And then county tax assessor's a whole other story, right? That's the one where you hope they appraise it at 0.
Yeah, yeah. Although when you go to resell and you're getting per square foot, when people go, oh, well, per square foot, then you actually want to add that and say, maybe you wait till the last minute before you're going to sell, and then you make sure it's recorded so the county assessor adds that extra 1,000 square feet or 800 square feet. Mm-hmm. So that makes sense. So clients that are coming to you are majority are owner occupied and they're aging in place type of people, or they just want to maybe go from full-time work to part-time work. The only way they can manage that is to get an extra 2 or 3 grand a month in rental income.
Another really common one is like there's kind of a millennial class that's recently bought a house, and they're either trying to expand their house because they can't buy up market, like they're having their second kid, and like that 2 bedroom is, or 1 bedroom sometimes, is getting pretty tight, and so building, and they're working from home now, so building is feasible compared to buying in this crazy market.
Yeah, for sure. Because you could do, and then also multi-generational parents that are now, in their 80s and so forth, and they want to sell their house because that's where their net worth is, and their kids are offering them, hey, I can do this ADU. You can take your $1 million and put it in the bank and live off that. Yeah. So there's a lot of uses, yeah.
And then the parents are taking the oldest generation is taking care of maybe grandchildren and taking care of child costs. So it's a really beneficial loop. A lot of the time I joke, like, people are discovering multi-generational living like it's a new thing, when a lot of, especially the Latino population and Asian population of California, has known about multi-generational living for a while, and everybody's kind of cottoning up to it now. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's so true. So what would be the purpose of doing an ADU and a junior ADU? Really, I mean, is that really coming down to maximize? State level, they're saying, hey, we need more housing, right? So we understand that part. Mm-hmm. But from an owner standpoint, the reason I would want to do a ADU and a junior ADU is now I have a single family home that I live in, and I'm renting my ADU and my junior ADU. So I'm getting basically getting a triplex in a sense.
Yeah, exactly. What I'd say is just to set expectations, ADUs have taken off. There's tens, thousands being built, right, in California. Junior ADUs are this niche concept, and they don't require as much independence and separation, but they do require owner occupancy of one of the units, whereas ADUs don't have that currently in California. And so JADUs have just not taken off. I can count on one hand the number of times I've seen one that's actually a JADU. And so very few people, even fewer, are doing both. But yeah, the reason you would is because it's a cool, chill way to get to a triplex. We alluded to SB9 at the top of the recording, and I think that's another chill way to get to a triplex or a quadplex if you don't mind owner occupancy.
What is SB? Can you explain SB9 to us?
Yeah. So like you just said too, California is trying to allow homeowners to build more housing, right? And so all of these are laws that just kind of give you other options to build housing where there's already housing, what we call residential infill. And SB9 is a relatively complicated law that has two big provisions. The first provision lets you split a lot. As long as it's an eligible lot, and there's lots of qualifications, like has to be in an urban environment in the census, can't be in a fire zone, stuff like that. It lets you split the lot pretty close to 50-50. And even if the resulting lots are much smaller than the underlying zoning would normally allow. So that's cool, right? You could, if you have, especially like at the end of cul-de-sacs and stuff, if you have a weird trapezoidal lot and you're not really using that back corner, you could do a split. And sometimes that virgin lot is already worth quite a bit in some neighborhoods, right? Yeah, the second provision in the law says anything that's zoned for one house, you can legally build a second house now using the underlying zoning rules. And that's pretty cool. It's a lot like an ADU, except it uses the underlying zoning rules. So it could be potentially as big as the main house, or it might have the same hindrances as the main house. In some ways, ADUs kind of get to skirt around some of the design requirements, whereas SB9 units really lean into them. And if you combine both parts of SB9, you could split a lot that's currently zoned for one house. You could split that lot in two and build 2 units on each lot for a total of 4, where there was previously only 1. Again, I haven't seen a lot of those. People are using it for reasonable density to build a second house, maybe a second house and an ADU, but very rarely do they do everything to get all 4.
Yeah. And what's your thought process since you've been doing this for a while? Site built versus a modular type of.
Yeah, it goes back to that conversation about customer needs, right? So if what you're trying to do is predictable and repeatable, then offsite has a lot of really strong arguments for it. If what you're trying to do is specific to your site and you're like a one and done homeowner, there's a lot of benefits out of custom construction that you're going to live in the unit and you want things just your way. And as soon as you deviate from the formula for offsite and modular builds, you're kind of losing a lot of the benefit of going with offsite. And so it sort of depends. It depends. If you want fast, predictable, repeatable, there's a lot of advantages to offsite and you should explore all your options. If you're really doing custom or one and done project, there's a lot of advantages to custom. And having said that, sometimes when I see the lot, I'm like, ooh, that's actually a shoe-in for a specific modular unit. This project could use this one. You should talk to this company. So it really depends.
What are the most liberal cities in the Bay Area for ADUs, like Santa Cruz?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If we want to talk really pushing the envelope, San Diego implemented a density bonus the same way that, affordable housing, if you build a certain amount of affordable housing in a big multi-unit complex, then you get to build denser than the underlying zoning would normally allow. San Diego says if you deed restrict an ADU to be affordable for 15 years, they'll let you build an additional ADU at market rate. And you could do that as many times as your lot size allows. So within transportation corridors in cities like San Diego, you could do a ton of ADUs on one lot. People were drawing up lots with 7 or 8 ADUs, and half of them deed restricted for 15 years, which isn't, an eternity, and then the other half at market rate to pay the bills. That's a pretty cool program. Yeah, you see a little bit of everything. A lot of cities have increased the maximum size limit to 1,500. And so some cities have increased the maximum height. Like Berkeley and Oakland have just passed rules that allow you to build 2 stories, whereas the state says 16 feet. They said, oh, 20, 25, So lots of cool stuff being done.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting what you can do. So now, I mean, it's making sense for people to really take a look at this, because even investors, I come from the investment background, that it just like you could really, where you couldn't cash flow before if you did it right. Now, a lot of the rules are geared for owner occupants, but some aren't. Like I had a colleague who just bought an 8-unit property in Santa Cruz, and he was adding 4 ADU units to the lot, which is pretty cool, right? So
Very cool.
And his pro forma was he was going to increase the value significantly because the cash flow was going to. So there's a lot of opportunity, just not only for the homeowner, but for investors and for people. So let's talk about like if I were to, like this Concord property I was talking about with a detached garage.
Mm-hmm.
What do we look for? Certain parking and different things where you think it'd be more feasible to convert. I mean, it seemed like to me the structure's there, it's sound. Maybe I have to reinforce the foundation and do some seismic work on the interior shear walls, and whatever else to code. But it seemed like the cheapest way to go.
Yeah.
Versus, yeah.
Conversions can be the cheapest end result, but they can also be the trickiest with the most uncertainty. And since I'm like a call you over the phone guy, I'm not the best one to tell you whether your garage conversion is a cheap dream job or a nightmare waiting to happen. What you want to do is start a conversation with your planning and building department and say, I have an existing structure. Never say it's unpermitted. It's existing non-conforming. It's just hanging out. And so you have an existing structure and you're curious about turning it into an ADU. What's the process and what will the building inspections look like? And they'll tell you whether, if it's a small town, maybe it's easy. If it's sometimes even in LA, it's pretty straightforward. Other places will say, oh, it's very complicated. We need you to, if it's finished like drywall, we need you to tear it open, show us what's inside. We really need to see everything that was done and document the existing conditions. And that already sets a big process difference. And then you want a builder who you trust to come out and look at it and just tell you what's what. Because if you do need to shore up the foundation, go deeper on the footing, redo some of the walls, that it can cost a lot. A lot of the time in the Bay Area, conversions, we call them conversions, but they're tear downs and replace. And you get the benefits of a conversion at the planning department, which means you get to maintain your footprint. You might be built right up on the lot line. You can stay right up on the lot line. If you're friendly with the neighbors, it's a good time to have a wine and cheese party and let them know you're building. But you can legally do that. And then there's other benefits to preserving that footprint and calling it a conversion. But at the same time, it's not a literal conversion. You're tearing it down and you're putting up new walls because it's almost more cost effective to do that than to preserve sometimes. Not very green. It's a funny situation. Berkeley's like all electric, but tear that stuff down and build new.
You're listening to the Investor Financing Podcast. We'll be right back after this break. Are you looking for funding? Are you getting frustrated trying to find a lender? Visit investorfinancingpodcast.com and click the Get Funding button. Complete the simple form and schedule a free phone consultation with one of our placement specialists. We have a proprietary directory of funding partners that can help you get the funding you need. It's fast and easy to explore the options available for your specific needs. Don't wait. Visit investorfinancingpodcast.com and get connected.
What do you say? There's a lot of these new ADU modular prefab, whatever we're going to call them, coming out of the woodworks.
Yeah.
How do you kind of
Yeah.
How do you find the ones that are, got the best ratings, affordability,
Hmm.
been there, done that, help? A lot of them seem to help with the permit process too,
Yeah.
but some of them don't. So what's your thought process on vetting these modular
This is a
home deal?
complicated one because, like, basically, I could spend an hour trying to teach people the difference between Title 24, Title 25, HUD approved, manufactured, and all these other things in between. But that's not actually super helpful. And so, what you just said is the best thing to do. You go to the company and you say, "I'm thinking about building an ADU in my city, in my state." And you give them the location, and I'm thinking about using your unit to do that. What am I going to, are you going to take care of permits or am I going to have to do that? And if I'm going to have to do that, can you just send me all the technical information I need to go to my planning and building department? And right away, the company, if they are legit and straightforward, they will tell you. If they're not in the ADU business and they are more in the building cool shells and not permitting them business, then you need those technical details to figure out with a builder and the planning department and building department how you're going to bring that up to code in your area. And if that conversation leads you to a path where it's cheap, then great. Get the cheap unit shell, work with that professional to get it up to code, and you've got a unit. If people start looking at the documents and like, there's no way you're going to meet the energy requirements, or there's no way you're going to, it's going to cost twice as much as the unit just to bring it up to code, which happens a lot. People always want to convert a container home or convert a tough shed. And like, it's not necessarily cheap to do that because once you're converting it, you're spending more money. And so that's kind of the best path. You go to the provider that you're considering and you say, hey, cut to the chase. I want to go to my planning and building department with the details. And they should help you, or you'll see really quickly that they're not ready to help you.
Yeah, because I see a lot more people doing shed to tiny home conversions or whatever we want to call those. So if you're going to look at doing that, you want to get the specs. Is it 2x6 construction? Is it 2x4 construction? What kind of windows? Because Title 24, what they want to know the energy efficiency. Mm-hmm. But usually, if they deliver the shell, then you're doing all the insulation and stuff yourself. So you would basically get the specs of the shell, bring it to your building and planning department. And then obviously beforehand, you should be doing some investigation as far as ADU requirements in your city. Like if I'm doing Las Vegas, I can go and I can Google the basic information. And then, there's people specific to states like yourself where you focus all throughout California. And so somebody calls you and you have a consulting package that they can do with you where you help them from A to Z. Or maybe they want a la carte where, hey, I just need you to help me do certain things. What does it look like? Can you kind of tell me how you're advising and like how your system works for these people that would be interested?
I do as much as I can for free on YouTube, right? So that like I have the same conversations very frequently, and it hit me that I should just put these online so that people can self-serve, and that helps me grow the channel, and I do sponsorship, so it supports me. Then if somebody uses that free information and they still need a little extra help, or if they're time sensitive and they just want somebody to do it, look at it for them with my eyes, then they book a call, and I'm pay as you go. There's a calendar on my website, and you book a call and you get to talk to me or a team member, and then we can help you through the stickier situation. So a lot of the time you'll go to that planning and building department, like I mentioned, and you'll get the distinct sense that they are not trying to help you. And sometimes cities have taken an oppositional stance toward these sorts of developments, or they're just not fully informed. Like city planners have to learn a ton of different things, and ADUs is just one of them. And in that scenario, you run it past me, and I can kind of suss out what's a good argument, what's a bad argument. I can contact the state enforcement body and kind of say, hey, do you mind giving a call and helping the city of la-di-da understand the rules a little bit better? And we can kind of coax them into a better outcome sometimes.
Yeah, because it's still it's new for a lot of these municipalities.
Yeah.
And what I could see this being big in the short term stay too, because if you're an owner occupier, a lot of the rules say, hey, we don't allow short term rentals unless you occupy a portion of the property yourself as a primary residence, right? So that's another kind of good model that people could be looking at doing if they wanted more, not permanent tenants, but wanted daily tenants. I'm sure so people are actually doing that now
Yeah.
successfully.
So in California, currently, there's a good news, bad news about that specific thing. There's a 5-year period where there are no owner occupancy requirements on ADUs, but there's a ban on short-term rentals under 30 days. And some jurisdictions then give you that right back, that give you that privilege back. But because the legislation is designed to create more permanent housing, there's this ban on short-term rentals, and it doesn't sunset. So you really have to be in a jurisdiction that allows it. That said, I'll be on the phone, I'll explain that to somebody, and they say, oh, darn, I can't do an Airbnb. And you go, well, hold on. You could move into the ADU and Airbnb your primary. You could build an accessory structure that's not an ADU, and it wouldn't have this part or that part according to the rules in your city, but you could Airbnb it. And sometimes that's a whole house, sometimes it's not. There's a lot of different, it just goes back to, depends what the customer's trying to do. Let's use the rules to figure out the best way to get to that outcome. And yeah, short-term vacation rentals, they're not my mission. Like, they're not why my business exists, but I'm definitely going to help you figure out how to cash flow your property. If that's going to help you create housing security for yourself, that is my mission. So.
What and kind of how did you get in the business of ADUs?
Yeah, it's a weird jump from wine, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure that out.
I moved to California to help start a company called Naked Wines, and had so much. It was a very fortunate time to move to California, and it's been a land of plenty and gave me tons of opportunities as a business person. Got to employ a lot of people from out of town, got to employ a lot of people from in town. And I found that my locals, who are very good employees, some of my best team members, they were moving farther and farther away. And I was part of the problem, right? I'm bringing jobs to this I'm bringing tech jobs to an ag county, and and there's not enough housing. And so we're driving the locals out. And it just drove me insane. And so,
where was that? Were
Napa.
you in Sonoma? Oh, Napa. Okay.
Napa. Yeah, our winery was up in Kenwood, which is northern Sonoma County, and our office was in Napa. And grew to 100 people in a few years. And so, as that business grew, and I'm not affiliated anymore. It was after it was acquired, and then I had a transition period of a few years where I helped as a publicly listed company, and now I have the opportunity to fix the other big problem that I see, which is housing. And so I want to bring some of my wine marketing chops and wine explaining chops. One of the things was trying to explain complicated concepts in simple ways so that people could understand wine and just enjoy it instead of talking about nuts. And that was a goal. I thought I could bring that to housing and just help people understand these complicated rules and how those rules can help them, not how the rules affect policy and economics, just how the rules will help you, right? So that's how I jumped in. Just dove in at the deep end, read a lot of books, and I'm very fortunate that a lot of people who've devoted their whole careers to housing have opened the doors to me and taught me everything they know and given me the opportunity to share that knowledge through shows like this. So thank you for having me on.
Yeah, no, that's great. And yeah, I do have one private lender I work with in the Bay Area. We didn't end up closing that deal, but what I like about him, he's done a lot of modular homes. Mm-hmm. And so part of the problem about financing these offsite builds, these modulars, is that you can't get traditional financing. Well, he's okay financing those throughout California. So that's pretty cool because I haven't found anybody else that gets, and he can do non-owner or owner-occupied. A lot of private lenders won't do owner-occupied because of all the Dodd-Frank and all that. Yeah. So he's actually a really good resource. He's done a lot of them. So I've worked on a few with him, and I think that's a little bit of the issues now. I know like San Jose's got a program, right? Like where they'll finance up to $40,000 or something like that.
I'm not sure what the figure is, but yeah, there's a lot of cool programs in the South Bay. There's specific programs. Yeah. Rather than get into the details of all of them, what I'll say is you subscribe to channels like mine, you follow podcasts like this one, and we'll bring the biggest things to light. Like just this week, I'm holding the policy announcement below my screen. The White House released a set of 38 actions to diminish the cost of housing over the next 5 years. And one of them is a policy directive to tell Fannie and Freddie And hey, you guys need to figure out a type of loan that applies to manufactured housing. You need to figure out loan types that apply to 2 unit, 3 unit, and 4 unit without getting into 50 units. And then you need to go to the FHFA and get approval on these things. And that's politicians setting policy, right? So we'll see when it happens. But with those changes, when they come through, are going to make a big difference. If you can suddenly get financing on manufactured housing with the same ease as you get capital for site built, that's a game changer. And that's going to open up real estate opportunities for people who know how to come up with the pro forma and like trot them out, right? And it's a very exciting time to be in housing.
Yeah, no, that's true. If like the FHA loan, they have like a 203K, which is a renovation loan. If they did that and adjusted it where you could build an accessory dwelling unit, then you're getting 97.5% financing at great rates. You're building more housing stock. You're making it affordable. Like we talk about house hacking. Have you heard? We talk about that a lot in our show because a lot of people want to get into owning real estate, investing and building wealth, right? Like if you own real estate, over time you're going to build wealth more so than somebody that rents their whole life usually. Mm-hmm. So I think that's huge. I follow companies like Boxable. Like mm-hmm. that's a company here in Las Vegas, and they're raising millions and millions of dollars right now. So it'll be interesting to see them when it becomes more mainstream, and then who else is out there to watch, and so it is a fascinating thing to understand. Like I know somebody that is in Antioch, and that's all they do is they take houses and they make them into basically take them into duplexes or a single family with ADU, and so being creative, it's really kind of a canvas, and there's a lot to learn. But your channel, I've followed it for a while, is very, very educational. You can go in, you can do a search on the topic you want to learn, and then just listen. And then when you have like my vision now is here, I kind of pulled the ADU rules in Las Vegas, but I just saw a lot that's almost an acre with 2 houses on it. I'm like, wow, what if I could build additional 2 ADUs, and whether I live in a big house and I mean, there's just it gives you options where you can live for free or get some cash flow. I had a talking to a lady. This is a good, and she was like, she was getting a divorce, and she had a nice house in Florida, and then she came up with the idea of building she built like a downstairs. She built like I guess you'd call it an ADU. I don't know if you call it an ADU in Florida or not, and anyways, then she soundproofed it. She had like a nice 600-700 square foot apartment, and then the whole upstairs she ran as a short-term rental. And she nets like $4,000 a month and has no housing expense. Mm-hmm. So that's game changer for people. All this stuff that you're talking about is when you really think about it, it's not only good for owner occupieds, investors, and everybody, but it's good because the people that really need a lot more people want to age in place, right? That's like a huge trend. Nobody wants to like not have to go live somewhere else, and they want to stay in their house. So being able to like kind of get a game plan. And that's like when you originally talked about, you were like, well, that's what you do with your clients. It's like, okay, you got this 3-story house. Let's get a site plan or a floor plan, right? And you can start drawing ideas, right? Literally, and then go to the planning commission and say, hey, will this fly doing it like this? Could we put a separate entrance here? And it could be as simple as that. And then I think my big thing on anything that would be an interior ADU would be really getting soundproof, because I've lived in apartments before, and it's my pet peeve is hearing people like, I don't know, if you hear people having sex next door to you, it gives me nightmare. So
and you got to consider your market, right? If you're in an urban environment where people don't care about noise privacy, all right, maybe. But if you're in the suburbs, like the reason people want to live in the suburbs is to have a little bit of privacy. And so don't build a 4-plex with all shared walls and no sound privacy, or you won't get customers. Like nobody, that's a different customer. So it's again, it kind of projects based, and you're absolutely right. You gotta think this through, make smart choices.
Yeah, well, this has been awesome. I really appreciate you sharing all this knowledge, guys. If you want to find out more, go to YouTube and go into the search and put "How to ADU," and you're going to get all of Ryan's videos. And there's a ton of videos, and he comes out with all the new updates. Like he'll do a video on this new update. So you can just stay abreast of what's going on, and whether you want to do it now or in the future, it gives you a better idea of like, what you can do, and then at the right time. And as people start moving, and people will realize they don't need to move now because they can cover their mortgage by this ADU. It's a really fascinating subject. So very exciting. Once again, Ryan, thank you so much. And thanks everybody for watching. I hope you enjoyed this show. We've only talked about ADUs one other time on the show, and people love ADUs. So thank you so much, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.